It Happened on the Job, the podcast for relatable conversations with contractors. Sponsored by Goodman Insurance.
Welcome to It Happened on the Job. We are your podcast for relevant and relatable conversations with contractors, hopefully bringing a little bit of entertainment to you as well. My name is Mike. That's Brian.
Yep.
Episode 60 today.
60. Dwight Becker is on episode 60. How you doing, Dwight?
Hey, I'm doing well. Is that because you guys are trying to get toward my age or what?
We're getting closer, right? Incrementally?
That's right.
So, Dwight, you are design build project manager with Facility Builders and Erectors Incorporated. Thanks for jumping on today. Give us some background in terms of where you've mentioned beforehand, you've been around the business for quite a while in terms of construction, but give us, which is great. So give us a roadmap of how you got started either in the industry or got to the industry and how you got to where you're at today.
You know, it really funny. This is going to be way back. And, I've been in the business for over 40 years, but I think really where kind of my heart for the business came in sixth grade shop class with Mr. Greenhagen.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately because kids today, they don't
doesn't exist
shop
anymore. Yeah.
No,
yeah, they don't do
that was my
that
favorite
stuff.
Class in 8th grade. I remember that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's where I got the enjoyment of just working with tools, working around wood. And so, I've always worked and finally I threw papers for, a while. But then when I got in a senior in high school and kind of got to the summer, I asked my dad, I said, can I quit doing that? And he said, yeah. And he lined me up with a general contractor in Phoenix, one of the largest GCs in Phoenix that he knew. And that summer I went out and I started working as a laborer. And I loved it. 18-year-old kid, they let me drive, they gave me a truck to drive sometimes. And believe it or not, that's where I learned the term scab because I was one.
Yep.
So anyhow, from there, and my dad had this saying, he said, you don't want to be in construction because, guys get old fast in that industry. And so I went to college, spent 4 years in college, but all throughout that time to make extra money, I just worked with my hands, with my tools. And so first year out of college, I ended up working for a small concrete contractor and realized I was never going to get further than just being a laborer. So I thought, well, I got to do something different. And my dad talked me into it. He used that same thing again. He said, you're going to get old fast. So come back to Phoenix. I was in California at the time. I went to APU. And so I went back to Phoenix and got a job for 6 months, worst job by far in my life, selling copiers. Horrible.
I was going to say Starbucks barista.
I had a friend that did that. Yeah, gosh. Or barista.
Yeah. When you said worst job ever, I thought
you made
for
my
sure
espresso
Starbucks.
wrong.
Yeah.
No, that was the worst. And so I said, Dad, I'll take my chance on getting old. So I went back, believe it or not, I went back to J.R. Porter. And I said, J.R., I'd like to get into the business as an estimator, or something in the office. And he said, well, I don't have anything. But he put in a good word for me at the AGC and the ABC. And I got a call out of the blue from one of those contractors. And next thing I knew, I was on this HUD project, building housing for the elderly in Phoenix. And it was the best experience in my life. I got probably 7 years of experience in 1 year. I got to see masonry, frame construction, steel construction. It was a fantastic opportunity. And that's really how I got into the business. And I never left it from there.
That's
very
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. How did you, you had mentioned before that you had been with with Facility Builders for the last 3 years. Where was that transition from where you were at there to the point where you're at today?
Yeah. So I worked for JR I worked on this project and then that project came to an end. I went back and I called JR again. I said, hey, JR, do you have anything in your estimating department? And way back when, and, I don't really want to bang on the younger set, right? But, I'm an old fart, so I can. So, I took a chance and I took a 50% pay cut.
Wow.
To go in the office and he called it the apprentice estimator. And so I started as an apprentice estimator with JR. And about another 2 years later, I became a project manager for him, and then just kind of kept, about every 5 years or so, it seemed like I moved and, thought I would have stayed with JR, but, he was very well known in Phoenix for training guys. And one newspaper asked him about his reputation about not keeping people real long. And they said, JR, what's this all about? And he said, well, if I had to work for me, I don't think I'd work for me either. So, he kind of knew who, he was tough to work for.
Well, not only that, but I feel like it's you almost build a legacy. You think of like some of those football coaches, right? And they kind of show those football, like NFL coaching trees, like all the guys that came from Bill Parcells and how successful they were all. Well, same kind of thing, right? I mean, if people are leaving and going to do the same thing somewhere else, then probably a jerk to work for. But if they're leaving and moving on and advancing their career because he's done well training them, then there's obviously something to be said for that and a legacy there for sure.
Yeah, that's it. There was probably at one time more guys that have worked for JR than any place else. And so when I left for JR, I worked for a couple other places, and then I started my own business. And my luck of starting businesses has not been well. Seems like I've always picked the time to start. Oh, great. Next year, we're going into a recession. Perfect. So, again, I held on to that for about, 5 years. And then my family.
Your own company for 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that was in Phoenix. And, we did small stuff. We never got real big. It was all commercial. And then we ended up deciding to move back to California. And
because you struck oil and became independently wealthy and thought, why not move back?
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. So, we moved back, and I actually tried working for myself for a year, and that didn't work out real well again. And so I seen this ad in the paper, and I applied for it. Lo and behold, I ended up working for the Walt Disney Company. So I spent 5 years working for the Walt Disney Company, and that's a story in itself. It was, for about the first 3.5 years, it was the greatest place to work for. And then I always say they were taken over by the military, and that didn't go well. But what I mean by that is they had this restructuring in our division. They hired all guys from the military. Nothing against it if you're in the military. Thank you for your service. But I didn't join the military, and I wasn't going to work for one at Disney. And so most of us all left.
Wow.
And then just kind of transitioned. I went to work for a great concrete company here in L.A., the Ben F. Smith Company. Really good firm, old school firm. And then ended up in about 3 years after that, working for J.D. Diffenbaugh out in Riverside. And started as a senior project manager and ended up being the director of operations up until 2010. And then after that, because I ended up while I was at Disney, I got a master's degree, and I just said, is management transferable? And a friend of mine was in manufacturing, so I slipped into manufacturing for about 7 years. And then ended up deciding, okay, that was a nice journey, and started my own company. My wife and I were actually doing mission work, and I wanted more time to be able to go out to different places to do that. So I started my own company for a little bit, mostly doing small residential, and don't ever do that.
That's backbreaking work, and they grind you for price on that stuff too, don't they?
Boy, I'll tell you what, you've got that. And then out of the blue, I got a call from a recruiter and asked me if I wanted to interview for a job with Facility Builders. And next thing I knew, I was working for them. And that was interesting too, being out of quote unquote commercial construction for 10 years. First job I was on, right? I was building they gave me a project out in Burbank to build a project for the city. And I'm talking to a sub, and he says, "You want me to bring my PPE?" What?
So, keep it in your pants.
Yeah, sure. You got to bring that to the job walk, right? So I get online, Google that up. I'm not out of business for 10 years.
What
we never
is
that term. Hey, just bring your hard hat. You're good to go. So I had to find out what PPE was, and lo and behold, here we are today.
So.
Personal protective equipment. Now, it's funny. It's like a household term now.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I learned about it about 5 years ago, and now everybody's talking about it because it is, well, we're in the COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your story.
No, well, that was it. It was just like, that was kind of the transition. And I'll tell you what, when you're out of something for 10 years, even though you were highly proficient at it, you have doubts, Can I go back and do this again? And lo and behold, the technology is different. Back now they had a thing called Bluebeam. My gosh, where was that when I was actually running work?
Right.
But now, and despite the fact of, being 63, I look at this stuff and I love technology, and, you pick that stuff up, and what a great communications tool. So anyhow, that's kind of the long and the short of it, of just, the journey on where I am today.
So how did that recruiter find you? Did you throw your resume in somewhere? Was it a friend of a friend? What was that connection?
That's really interesting. I still to this day don't know. And it's an interesting story. I really questioned myself for the 4 years while I had my company, doing the residential work. Is this really what I was supposed to be doing? And my wife and I just had a conversation, and we said, you know what? It just seems, like this is it. This is what, and we're Christ followers. And I said, this seems to be like what God's directing us to do. And so I said, let's just go for it. Next thing I know, God has a sense of humor. I get this phone call from a recruiter. Kidding. And I look at my wife. What's this all about? And I said, well, let's go. Let's see if that door opens. And lo and behold, it did.
So what kind of work are you doing with them? What kind of projects are you on mostly?
Well, as my wife says, I've gone from classy to trashy.
Okay.
So one of Facility Builders' main market sectors is in the trash business. Since the state of California has mandated that most waste, there is a diversion rate that has, I think it's in a couple of years, they have to be like 80 to 90% diverted that cannot go to the landfill. And so all these trash companies have got to do major projects. And right now I am probably on the most difficult projects I've ever been on. And we're actually covering an existing facility out in Sun Valley. It's 9 acres, and we are putting there are 3 independent buildings, but they're interconnected, but they act as independent buildings. And each one of those buildings has a 300-foot clear span to it. And they're pre-engineered metal buildings. And Facility Builders, we are a dealer, and we're one of the few Butler dealers here in Southern California that actually erect own product. And we actually sub out our erection to other Butlers. So a lot of praise to my superintendents running the job on a daily basis, and Albert's doing a great job. Albert Craft just does a job for us out there. But that is primarily the project that I'm on, and I've been on it now since November of 2018, and we will finish next year in about May of 2021.
So Just kind of random, but we talked to a guy a couple weeks ago that does a lot in that same
Jim
industry.
Andrews. Yeah.
Do you know Jim Andrews? Has the name come up at all? Jim Andrews. He has developed and applies some sort of like heavyweight load bearing concrete flooring for a lot of the trash. Facilities.
I don't know the name, but I may know the company. There actually is, particularly on the waste, the floors get just torn up immensely.
And that's what he's saying. Yeah, this stuff that he has, this product he has, I guess, this
I am
sort of magical product.
Company.
Yeah. American Restore, is that it? Yeah,
I think so.
American Restore. Yeah, no, just kind of a small world, kind of a little coincidence. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I guess your title is Design Build Project Manager. So were you involved in the design portion of that too, or are you just overseeing the project management?
Well, actually, much of the design was done. So this is really this is where the crazy part comes in. So this project was actually designed for another company in 2016 and 2017. Facility Builders did it, but the trash facility was owned by a Northern California company. And then they sold it to a local company. And then we came in and we had to complete the design. So we were not only under the gun with the city of LA, to get the permit done by, I think it was August of 2018. And we had to finish the design, and we were just turned back on to go do that in late 2017. And so we had to complete the design. And so we got the building permitted with the original concept, knowing that we were going to have to turn around right again and redesign it again because it didn't meet what the current owners wanted to do. And so, believe it or not, I am still fighting permits.
Wow.
And we have about 3 permits that are out right now that I still have to work through in order for us to complete the project next year.
But everything we've heard is that permits are super easy to get right now with everybody working from home and being super efficient with the city and the county, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You want to know, this defines a black hole right now. I'll tell you.
Times suck, huh?
Oh boy, I'll tell you. Yeah.
So
and I'll tell you what. Here's the other challenge, and the other challenge. What we're seeing right now is guys that work for the city my age are all retiring. They're aging out and all that. And you get a lot of, and rightly so, you get younger folks coming into the industry. But that, that practical, that historical, that, hey, really understanding the code, where they get leeway has gone. Mm. And so now you have, if it doesn't say it in the code book, we're not doing it that way. When, there was some common sense before, you could walk them through this. Yes, this is what the code says. It may not 100% apply because of the, restrictions of the project. And you could talk to the engineers, the plan checkers and all that and work through it. Now it is just extremely difficult.
Red tape after red tape after red tape, huh?
Is that more of a generational thing, do you think? Or, in terms of this generation either wasn't taught well or just is decided to kind of take their own thing? Or do you think it's more of a bureaucratic kind of new policymakers coming in with new thoughts in terms of that?
So I think there's 2 aspects of that. One of the aspects is like myself. I grew up hands-on. I really grew up, starting as a carpenter. So I was out in the field and I had the hands-on experience of what I could do.
Yeah.
And that really helps you when you translate that and somebody gives you a change order, you can begin to click through and understand, field operations and all that.
So I've done that before. Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of the same thing. Guys my age that maybe transitioned into the city had some field experience. And so even within our industry, I'm sure within the city, now you're getting guys that are coming right out of college and they have not necessarily applied or had that field hands-on experience being a tradesman or being out in the field as assistant superintendent working their way up.
Right.
So that practical understanding is missing. And then the second piece of that, and we found this on a couple instances with LA, is that the guy that left did not do a good job or didn't really take the time to train the next generation. And this is just not with the city of LA. When I was with J.D. Diffenbaugh, we would ask our superintendents to be mentors to the younger guys, and some of them just did not want to do it. They did not want to be bothered with that. And I've always had the feeling for me, give me somebody to mentor because I'm going to be gone. That's part of a legacy. Leaving a legacy, the desire to mentor is really part of your legacy in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, for the most part, we've heard similar. Well, I mean, in terms of the permitting side, we've heard a lot of the same issues, but it makes a lot of sense. If you have really no idea what, somebody else, my dad used to always say, you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes so that way you can understand what they're going through. So if you lose that component on the city side or even on the civic side, then it's not going to translate well to when those permits are going through. So yeah, that's really too bad. I guess the only way to fix that is to really kind of reinstate or find people that are willing to pour into that next generation again, or at least make it so that it's, and I don't think this would necessarily happen, but make it so that these individuals within, in the municipalities and the cities are actually going to work for a bit. But it sounds like just the way technology is going today, and that might be just a thing of the past. Unfortunately, it's really too bad.
Yeah, it really is. And, I've always been a proponent, be it an architect or an engineer, that part of their degree or part of them being able to get a license, an engineering or an architectural license, is they should actually spend a year, 2 years out working for a general contractor or somebody to understand the practical side of it.
Yeah. I
think it would just be a tremendous benefit to them in their career and what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you get to see the other side, and when you're asking certain things, you could say, well, that's a little unrealistic.
So you mean to tell me that you've gotten a set of plans or designs and they just were unpractical to actually implement in the field? That's something that you've seen happen?
Well, I'll tell you what, yeah. And I'll tell you what, when you work for the Walt Disney Company, you want to talk about seeing plans that are unbuildable sometimes. Holy shnikes.
They got magic, though. There's nothing that can't be done there, man.
Yeah.
They got magic.
Mickey magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hey, I was drawn into, because a lot of the people that are listening to the show are, artists and contractors, small subs, or even larger subs too. But you mentioned something about going into work on the residential side for 5 years, and right before it sounds like where you're at today, and how that maybe caused some issues in terms of maybe your life and marriage overall. But maybe if you could speak to that, some of those
challenges,
challenges and hurdles that you faced on a daily basis as well, that maybe caused you to kind of rethink.
Pick up that phone and take that phone call.
Oh yeah. Hello, recruiter. Yeah.
Well, I think there's two things that residential guys are fighting, particularly, maybe the local, the guys that maybe aren't building a higher end residential thing. And that's I think this applies probably to any residential project. Owners just don't understand changes. They don't understand cost of changes. When you work for a developer or a client that is used to building all the time, they understand when you go and say, hey, we've got this change, and they comprehend that. They are anticipating that, they expect that. But when you work for a residential owner, that's really tough. They don't, and that's the hardest thing to find. And then I think the second thing is really dealing with, it's so easy to get in and now be able to get a license, even sometimes if you're not necessarily well trained. Okay, so you're taking somebody like myself that has a very, very high level of professionalism, quality, and all that sort of stuff, and you get other people, and I think the residential people are really just looking at price. What can I get? And I'm willing to live with less quality if I can pay less money. And I think that's hard for a tradesman, for guys that are in business, to be able to make a living, competing against that. And for somebody like myself, you're going to find that I carried all the insurance. I put back and bought capital into equipment. You would not believe, I go down when I'm at Home Depot sometimes and I've got to return some parts of that. I'm standing in line with a guy and here's a brand new, they didn't even throw the box away, but there's a brand new table saw, a brand new chop saw, or a miter saw, and he comes up and says, yeah, they didn't work the way I wanted to. So they would buy the product and take it back right away. Well, use it for what they needed to do.
Cash flow management.
Yes, maybe I'm the stupid one. Okay, silly me. I thought I'd go buy this stuff and use it again. But I think those are the two biggest challenges with people. Let me just tell you the other challenge: Pinterest. Oh my gosh. What you get these homeowners looking at Pinterest, I want this. And all of a sudden you get down to the point and they've got no clue what this costs. And you tell them what this costs and they think you're a thief.
Yeah.
Pinterest. That's awesome.
It's funny. That's actually kind of true. My wife and I, a couple of years ago, we were looking at putting in an entertainment center. And so we went through Pinterest for weeks. But yeah, it's very expensive if it's done right. Because, You're right. You're dealing with the craftsmanship of the contractor who's coming in and saying, I don't want to do something like IKEA. We're not going to build something, quickly and low quality. And then of course there's just the cost of doing business, between the insurance, between, paying for your guys and the material and the time. I mean, Did
you find you had any? Were there any strategies or things that you would do or say that would kind of help educate the consumer in those situations sometimes?
One of the things I ended up doing is really pointing out beforehand that anything that's in the house that does not meet code is not in my bid.
Yeah.
And because of being a remodel contractor, you ran into that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it would be occurred that maybe it happened before they bought the house, but somebody come in and just, throw something up. It's not the code. And, you've got to put it back to code. And I would go in and, my gosh, I've seen electrical connections outside of a J box, that somebody just tucked it back into the wall. So those are the type of that. I think that's the biggest strategy to talk about. The other thing I started to do is go to allowances. And for particularly when we would go in and do ceramic tile work, and it would be part of the job, I'd say, here is your material allowance. Anything over that is in addition to it. And that actually seemed to work out real well, is rather moving away from an
all-in-one firm quote to actually kind of itemizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I mean, we've heard some other people too, is kind of making it clear to the homeowner, especially if obviously you're licensed, right? Like, you could go hire an unlicensed contractor, but you've got no recourse against them, right? Like if they do shitty work or walk off your house, like you've got nothing to hold against them to do all that. And on the flip side, from a contractor standpoint, you've got nothing to hold them to force them to pay you.
Yeah.
You're not licensed. So yeah, there's some education on that side of it too, that hopefully is being addressed as well.
And you talk about on the unlicensed side, I walked into a beautiful home. It was down in Balboa, and so these people paid, you can imagine what that price of that home was.
Yeah.
And this guy was recommended to him. And I walk in there and, shear walls were cut out, columns were cut out.
Wow.
Structural members were put in that were not sized by an engineer. And I hated to tell them this, but they had $100,000 worth of damage to their house and it was unlivable.
Wow.
Just by what this guy came in and did.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yep.
Well,
so what's the future look like for you? What's
what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Where are you headed? Are you pretty comfortable where you're at right now with Facility Builders? Is there's something on the horizon maybe from an advancement standpoint?
No, you know what? That's funny. You're talking to a guy whose career has regressed, and I'm happy with that.
Well, no, there's definitely something to be said for kind of tailing off that workload as you get to a certain point in your life.
Well, you know what? It's actually isn't even necessarily the workload side. But I am back doing what I really enjoy. I got into this business because I love to build. I love to see.
Right.
Start out with a piece of dirt and end up with a beautiful project or, whatever type of project you end up with right
or
now.
A trashy project or.
Yeah, at least something standing in place where it was dirt, okay?
Ideally, knock on wood, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm happy building, and I don't have to put up with the political BS. I don't have to put up with strategic planning meetings out the kazoo,
Mm-hmm.
I just show up every day and we get to go put hammer to nail. And I'm enjoying life right now from that perspective. And really, I figure I have probably, between 5 and 7 years left in the industry. And I just hope I can, the industry stays strong enough that I can, finish strong in it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And then, we're going to pack it up, get an RV and see the land.
There you go.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Living the dream.
How's it going right now with COVID internally with you guys? Is it you guys all remote? It sounds like you're working remotely right now. Is that pretty standard for you guys or?
No, it's primarily because of COVID. We have chosen at least our office staff to work remotely. And so we transition people in and out of the office. I go out to the job site 1 or 2 days a week right now. and then spend the day out there. As far as COVID on the job site, you talk about a hit. I think we're right now up to about $25,000 of what it's cost our job, for the COVID.
From a time lost or like a material standpoint,
Probably
or all of the
both.
above?
Yeah.
Well, it's all and above. I mean, for a while, when this thing first started and LA was really, they were tough. They were really tough. And it's not that they've leaned up, but I think everybody learned how to adapt to it, right?
Found a way to work around it or with them, yeah.
Yeah. So we actually brought an extra superintendent out to the job just to enforce COVID procedures so that 2 superintendents we had could run the project.
Wow.
And so, and that was just not our crew, because we've got between 20 and 25 guys out on the job at a time. But we also have, at any one time, we could have, 50 to 70 subcontractors or crew out on the job. So it's just was to take a look at that. But then because we have so much equipment on the job, every day we bring in one of the young cubs early, and his whole job is just sanitize all the equipment. I mean, we have to put sanitizing stuff on the equipment so that during the day they can clean it. And so it really has. It's become a big thing on our project. I think we've had 6 guys right now go out with COVID.
Oh, wow.
Only I think one of them has yet to return to the project.
Okay.
And I think he'll come back next week. And so, so it's definitely impacted. I know, like on our structural steel, our structural steel was, we had a small portion of it that got delayed by a week just because they had a couple guys go out. Mm-hmm. And, they just couldn't get on the job with the crew they had to erect. So, it's definitely playing a big impact on what's going on in the project right now.
But from a safety standpoint, or not a safety standpoint, but from a recovery standpoint, it sounds like a lot of these guys are getting better and they're coming back to work.
Yeah. Believe it or not, this is an interesting story. Out of all the people that at least our company knows, one of our employees, he and his wife got it, and his wife actually fared worse, and she's a fitness instructor. She was the one that had a real hard time getting through it. And he got through it, but she struggled, and she is now on her, mended up pretty well and coming back. But it's just, and that's the thing. It's just crazy. You just don't understand how it affects some people and not others.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely a curveball. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Dwight, thanks so much for coming on today. Maybe if you could let the listeners know where to find you in case they want to contact you, and maybe where they can find facility builders and erectors as well.
Yeah, facility builders and erectors.com we're on the internet. So we have a website. We're actually on Facebook as well.
Cool.
So, they could check that out. As far as myself goes, it's just D Becker, D as in David, B as in boy, ECKER at facilitybuilders.com. And it's been great talking to you guys, and I appreciate the time to pass some information along.
Yeah, no, we love having you, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Dwight. Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys.
Have a good one. Stay in touch, Dwight.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dwight.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and give us a like or 5 stars or whatever means you like us.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. And check out our website for more video content and extras.
While you're there, shoot us a message if you want to be a guest. We'd love to have you on.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.